So I literally thought people were joking when they were talking about stepsisters getting with their stepbrothers. Turns out it's not a joke, and I just found out that my boyfriend cheated on me with his stepsister. When I was a freshman in high school, I got into a lot of trouble and ended up getting my phone taken away for 6 months and had no social media for a year. My parents literally didn't allow me to have Snapchat until the summer before my senior year. But I was allowed to have an Instagram, so the moment that I was allowed to have my socials back, I made an update on my story. And within a few hours, the boy that I had been talking to before I got my phone taken away swiped up. We started messaging, talking again, hitting it off all over again, and even though he lived about 2.5 hours away, within a week we started dating. I actually had a few other friends that were dating guys in the same town, so I was like, if they can, so can I. After dating him for a few months, I decided to invite him over to my dad so that they could meet. Both my dad and him hit it right off the bat. Chef's kiss. Also, we can call this guy Darren. I noticed that he was super weird with his phone and he would put it in his pocket anytime I was near. I asked him what that was about and he was like, well, I just don't want to be on my phone. It seems rude. It seemed like a logical response, so I brushed it off. But the next day, a girl messaged me saying that she was dating Darren. So my boyfriend ended up cheating on me with his stepsister. And also other girls as well. So once this first girl reached out to me and said that she had been dating Darren, I blew up in his face. She explained to me that they had been dating for a few weeks, so I ended up breaking up with him. But then he was blowing up my phone and threatening to unalive himself, so I got extremely worried. And I ended up just giving in to getting back together with him. And once I got back together with him, things were pretty much a smooth ride for 6 months. It didn't seem like he was talking to any other girls, and he would come to my mom's house on one weekend and then my dad's house on the other weekend. So we were seeing each other every weekend. And it was so nice until I got a message from a different girl who also claimed that they had been dating. So again, I blew up in his face and I broke up with him. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And once again, the manipulator in him made a reappearance and he blew up my phone just crying, saying that he was going to end his life, and again, getting me to fall for his stupid tricks. This time I decided to go about it a different way and get all the social media passwords. I would log in and check periodically, but if you guys remember, I did not have a Snapchat. So the day that my parents allowed me to have one, I went ahead and logged into his. Story time about my boyfriend cheating on me with his stepsister and other women. So once I was allowed to have Snapchat and logged into his account, I saw him messaging multiple other girls, including his stepsister. And when I tell you guys I scrolled up on these messages and found out that he had been sleeping with her too, this had been going on for 2.5 years before he finally called things off with me and broke up with me. We met up to exchange things and I gave him all of his stuff back, but he didn't give me any of my stuff back because he forgot. And he tried to give me his own stuff back, saying that we were on a break and would get back together. Because I called things off with him, he ended up throwing all of my stuff like my clothes, jewelry, Beats headphones in a fire pit and burned them. As if he was the victim. Like, what did I do to you? You were the one sleeping with your stepsister our entire relationship. After about 3 months, he showed up with a new girlfriend on his Instagram. And she ended up messaging me asking why he still had pictures of me all over his room and why my necklace with my name on it was hanging in his truck.
What to do when your client refuses to pay? No pay, no nail.
Story of the time my friend made me lie to my parents. So I was either 15 or 16, and it was one of the first time that I tried. So we did a lot of that, and then we went back to her house. I started to get really paranoid, and it felt like I was floating. And every sound that I heard felt like it was echoing. I ended up getting so scared that I texted my mom and asked her to pick me up and told her what we were doing. My friend ended up seeing my phone and started freaking out. But my parents were always laid back as long as I told them the truth. And I told her that, but she still freaked out. So she told me to call my mom and tell her that we were pulling a prank on her so that I could stay. You could tell my mom thought I was lying because she was like, okay, well, I'm still gonna come pick you up. Mind you, I was supposed to sleep over. But my friend really didn't want me to leave. So she came up with this great plan. She told her little siblings to go up to my parents' car when they got there and pretend to be laughing because they fell for the joke. And my parents are not dumb. And her siblings were not actors. So my parents end up coming, like for part 2. Story of the time my friend made me lie to my parents. Part 2. So my mom was not falling for it. She was like, no, I'm gonna come pick you up. So she gets to my friend's house. And like I said, my friend did not want me to leave. And she didn't want to get caught for... So she came up with this elaborate plan that her little siblings were gonna go up to my parents' car and pretend like they're in on the joke. Like I said in my last video, her little siblings were not actors. All 3 of them were under 10 at the time. So before my mom came, she rehearsed with them what they were supposed to say. She wanted them to say, oh my god, that was so funny. You guys fell for the joke. My sister and Mia told us about what they were doing and we thought it was so funny. We didn't know that you were gonna come pick up Mia. But instead, they started to fake cry. And it's so obvious when a child fake cries. They were like, please don't take me away. This whole thing was a prank. It was so obvious, so I was like, I'm just gonna go. So we get in the car, my mom looks at me, and I was like, she made me do that so she wouldn't get caught.
Story time of how I made my high school bully's dad my sugar daddy. Freshman year wasn't the best time for me. I wasn't the most popular or best looking girl at school. I was really shy, and instead of trying to make friends and talk to people, I kept to myself. Most people let me do my own thing, but then there was a girl named Claire. I don't know what I ever did to this girl, but she made my life miserable every chance she got. Making fun of my looks and putting me down in front of others was almost a daily ritual for Claire. My mom didn't have a lot of money, so I couldn't afford the cool clothing brands and styles that were in. Claire would call me out for being poor and say I got all my clothes from Goodwill, all while laughing. One day at lunch, she smacked the tray out of my hands as I was passing by and food got all over me. This resulted in the whole cafeteria staring and laughing at me. Fast forward to the end of senior year and I had a major glow up. I was more confident, people started noticing me, and I had a lot of friends. I figured it was time to start dating, but I didn't really like anyone at school, so I downloaded a dating app. I matched with a handsome older guy who was looking for a sugar baby. I looked him up on Instagram to see more pictures and saw Claire in one of his photos. Upon further inspection, I discovered that this man was her recently divorced dad. I immediately messaged him. Part 2 of how I made my high school bully's dad my sugar daddy. I began chatting back and forth with Claire's dad through the dating app. He was twice my age, but he was handsome, and given the circumstances, I had to give this my best shot. He told me he was looking for a beautiful girl to spoil and spend time with, and made it very clear that he was interested in me. After talking for a few weeks, we set up our first date, which was dinner at a nice restaurant, followed by shopping. I knew this man had money because I remember Claire being one of the rich girls at school, and I was right. He took me to the Louis store and let me pick out any bag I wanted. We kept talking and it was working out really nicely for me. He would send me money every week for makeup, to get my nails and hair done, or for whatever else I needed in between dates. One week he said he couldn't go on our usual Saturday night outing because his daughter was coming over for dinner. I was not going to waste this opportunity. I told him how much I was looking forward to seeing him and asked if I could join them. He was hesitant at first, but I eventually talked him into it. I'll never forget the look on Claire's face when I walked in and kissed her dad. I showed Claire the new purse that her dad had bought me and bragged about how well he's always treating me. She was fuming and stormed out shortly after. To this day, he's still my sugar daddy and Claire hates everything about it. Story time about how I caught my best friend with my ex-boyfriend just a few weeks after we broke up. We became friends in middle school and were inseparable ever since. My boyfriend and I met when we were 20 and we were together for 3 years. I'm not a strong drinker, so whenever we would go out, I would usually be the DD. My best friend used this opportunity to get extremely wasted every time we went out. Every time she got drunk, she would be extremely flirty with my boyfriend. She would do things like touch his chest, lean on him, and want to be in every picture or video he took. I chalked it up to her being drunk and didn't think too much into it. Fast forward to when me and my ex finally broke up. My best friend encouraged me to break up with him and told me that I deserved better. Shortly after, I noticed that she was hiding things from me and not telling me where she was or who she was hanging out with. Whenever we kicked it, she was always on her phone nonstop, and when I looked over, she would hide her phone or turn it over. One day I looked over and I noticed my ex's name as the contact that she was texting. I let it go that night, and the next day I checked her Snap location. Her location was in my ex's neighborhood, so I texted her and asked her what she was up to. She tried to play it off by saying she was shopping with her mom. At this point, all I saw was red. I decided to grab my keys and go over to my ex's. Part 2 of catching my best friend with my ex-boyfriend a few weeks after we broke up. So my ex had a habit of not locking his doors, and when I went up to the door, guess what? It wasn't locked. I quietly let myself in and made my way up to his bedroom. I could already hear noises coming from the bedroom, so I knew what was up. Or so I thought I did. Imagine my surprise when I flung the door open and saw my best friend not with one, not with two, but 3 guys, and one of them being my ex. The look on her face when I walked in and saw her was priceless. I should also mention that I was recording all of this, so I got it all on video. My best friend ran after me with a blanket around her. At first, she was apologetic and begging for forgiveness. But after noticing that I was pretty much done with the friendship, she started being a huge bitch. She started calling me names and telling me it's not her fault that my ex likes her better because she's not vanilla like me. The next thing I did was really petty, but at the moment I didn't care. I texted the video I had of her to her sister and let her know what was going on. That's when she went into a full-on rage and tried to swing on me. I dodged it, yanked the towel, and slapped her right back. I left her on the lawn looking stupid and naked. All of her friends took my side and I never heard from her.
Why am I not verified? Here are TikTok's requirements. You must be at least 18 years old or older, have an article written about you, be featured on a couple websites, or big platforms like BuzzFeed or Art Insider or Beauty Insider, have supporters on more than one platform, and yes, I do qualify all of those. I'm 20 years old. I've been featured on numerous articles. I've been featured on Beauty Insider and Art Insider. I've also been featured on multiple websites like Famous Birthdays. I have 3.1 million babies on TikTok, 600,000 babies on YouTube, and 54,000 babies on Instagram. I also own a business. And yes, I reached out to TikTok about this with screenshots, and apparently I still don't qualify.
Part 2 of why skipping detention might be a good idea. As he walked towards me, I was getting nervous. I told him that I had an emergency and I had to go, but I would email the school and reschedule later. Right after this, I ran off. As I was running away, he yelled at me and told me that I had to obey him and come to detention or he'd call my parents. At this moment, I didn't care. The feeling in my gut kept growing, so I sprinted to the bus and went home. I was afraid that he'd call my parents, but my parents greeted me normally when I got home, so I assumed he didn't. The next day, I was expecting to get an earful, but he wasn't there, and as weeks passed, he never came back. Then a shrink came to our class and asked if he'd like to talk about our math teacher, but no one knew why. Fast forward a few years later when I became a teacher and started chatting with my coworker. I mentioned his name, speaking to her about my weird, bizarre teacher and how I skipped attention. That's when one of the oldest workers there went pale hearing his name. It turns out a few days after I skipped attention, my math teacher was arrested for downloading child you-know-what from the dark web. He also had tons of snuff videos doing terrible things to children and teens. Now I always wonder what would have happened if I hadn't followed my gut instincts and stayed for detention that day with just me and him in that classroom.